What is going on, Headliner Nation? Jake and Kyle coming at you together this week. Kyle, we're going to end the season a little bit differently. Why? It's week 17, and not everybody plays fantasy football week 17, so we're going to compile all of our start-sit videos into one ginormous episode and cover everybody here and try to keep it as quick as possible for you guys here in week 17. Kyle, you ready to do a combined start-sit video? We've never done this before.
It's like the super fantastic, gigantic end of the season celebration something.
Yeah, it's something like
that's what
that.
I came
But
up
hey,
with.
we've seen a lot of messages on Twitter. We've seen it all over the comment section. People winning championships all over the place, and that's what we love to see. And we want to hear about those stories as well. So make sure you look us up on Twitter. Myself and Kyle, our links are down below in the description. Leave comments on this video. Tell us, hey, I won my championship this year. We want to celebrate that with you because that's what it's all about over here. But Kyle, before we get into week 17, we're going to keep it the same way. We're full transparency here. Even though we're together, we're going to say how we did in week 16, which was a big week for a lot of people. And overall, Kyle, what does that look for?
Even though we're together.
Yeah, it's weird. It's we're talking about transparency together because of this. Never mind. Anyway, we're going to talk about how we did in week 16, which is a big week for a lot of people. And there's a lot of names to go through here real quick. We'll throw them up here on the screen for quarterbacks. Out of the 32 quarterbacks we gave a start or sit designation to, 24 of them that were correct for an accuracy percentage of 75%. Running backs, huge week for running backs. 58 total running backs discussed, 47 correct, accuracy percentage of 81%. Wide receivers, 96 wide receivers we talked about because we had to give options with all the issues last week. 71 of them were correct for an accuracy percentage of 74%. And for tight ends, we rounded them out with 38 out of 50 for an accuracy percentage of 76%. Overall, a great week for week 16. And we got to do it again here for week 17 because if you're playing this week, you're playing for a championship and nothing else. So there's a lot on the line, and it's a difficult week. My first bit of advice, stop playing week 17 fantasy football championships because this is going to be a total cluster, if you know what I mean, because there's going to be a lot of names that are going to be not playing this week. They're going to be sitting out. They're ready for the playoffs. They may not be there this week, and we have a few names that we do want to discuss, Kyle. And the first one on the list is Patrick Mahomes. I mean, there's a chance that we don't see any Patty Mahomes this week. That could hurt a lot of people who may be counting on him here this week.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a huge one. Not only for Patrick Mahomes owners, but apparently they're going to rest all their starters. So now you lose Travis Kelce and now you lose Tyreek Hill as well. So, yeah. I mean, that's just a huge issue for owners.
Yep, we already know Big Ben. He's not going to be, playing this week. We'll see a lot of Mason Rudolph, which kind of sucks because it's Mason Rudolph. Jared Goff has his broken thumb. He will not be out there in a must-win game for the Rams. No Cooper Kupp now. We already know that Darrell Henderson's going to be out. We got no Cam Akers. I mean, the Rams are hurting, and they got to win to get in. No Brandon Ayuk. No Harrison Bryant. A lot of people that we know about will not be in lineup, so make sure they're not in yours this week. And one thing before we get into all these matchups is kind of look at the teams, Kyle, who have something to play for, right? Because the teams that are trying to fight for that playoff berth are the people who are going to be playing their starters the entire time. And those are the teams we really need to try to target here this week.
Yeah, this is the ultimate don't overthink it week, okay? You got to go with the best matchups. Numbers don't matter. Research doesn't matter. I mean, you can dig into all the numbers you want this week and look at all the information. Week 17 is a complete wild card. You put the guys out there in your lineup that you know are going to play. That's all there is to it.
Yep, the biggest teams that have something to play for as of right now, the Tennessee Titans, Miami Dolphins, Baltimore Ravens, Cleveland Browns, Indianapolis Colts, the Washington football team, the Los Angeles Rams, Arizona Cardinals, Chicago Bears, Dallas Cowboys, and New York Giants. They're fighting for it there in the NFC East to see who can suck least to make it to the playoffs. So all those teams have something to play for here in Week 17, and those are the teams you really need to focus on, Kyle. But we'll head in here to Week 17. The first matchup we're going to be talking about is the Atlanta Falcons and Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And, I mean, Bruce Arians has come out and says that he's not going to rest his starters. But do we believe anything that Bruce Arians says, like, ever? Because the guy constantly just has a bunch of clickbaitish, type, scenarios out there on a weekly basis.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem. I mean, last week against Detroit, they pulled Tom Brady out with that huge halftime lead. They're not really playing for too much this week in terms of getting in or seeding or anything like that. So for me, I've got, I'm going with Mike Evans as a start, Antonio Brown as a start, and Rob Gronkowski as a start for wide receivers and tight ends. If Evans plays to begin with, I think it's a very short stint. You hope that he gets a TD and then he's probably done for the day. out of Godwin and Evans, I think Godwin maybe gets a little bit more rest. Evans has had such a big year so far that they keep him out there a little bit longer. AB probably stays out there a little bit longer since he's had the least amount of time in the offense. And then you see like Tyler Johnson, Scotty Miller come out, and then Gronk maybe only plays a few, drives as well.
And you mentioned that matchup last week for Brady. He absolutely killed it. I mean, he's been playing great here. End of season. I mean, the offense has been kind of hit or miss at times, but I mean, he's had 3 out of the 4 last weeks. He's had a top 12 finish. The running game has kind of been I mean, Leonard Fournette scoring touchdowns the past 2 weeks with no Ronald Jones, but now it sounds like Ronald Jones is going to be cleared to return. So what's that backfield going to look like? It's going to be kind of a mess, right? I mean, are they going to go back to a split? Is it going to be Ronald Jones backfield? I mean, where they're going up against the Falcons, who are number 5 in the NFL against opposing running backs. It's very tough to run on Atlanta, but you can throw all over them. So it really depends if they can get an early lead. A lot of these guys, I do think, rest. As of right now, I would prefer to sit the entire backfield, not even worry about Leonard Fournette or Ronald Jones. If you have to go with one of them, and Rojo is 100% cleared and healthy, that's the guy I go with, since he seemed to have the lead in that backfield before that injury. And Tom Brady, not ideal, because I do think he rests, but we saw what he could do in just one half of football. But as of right now, have him as a start. Also, next game up is going to be the Dallas Cowboys and New York Giants. I mean, this is a must-win for both of these teams. I mean, they got to try to I mean, they have playoff chance, which is absolutely ridiculous to be below 500 and fighting for a playoff spot, but it's happening. And we already know that we're probably not going to start Daniel Jones. I mean, he hasn't really given you any reason to want to start him. He just has no consistency in his game. He's not 100%. If he doesn't have that mobility, you lose the rushing upside. But Andy Dalton has actually played pretty well the past few weeks. I mean, he's actually putting together a string of games, which makes him fantasy viable. If you have maybe a Patrick Mahomes and you're worried about, hey, he's probably not going to play, and your only other option is to pick up somebody maybe off of waivers, Andy Dalton's not a bad name that I would probably consider this week. I mean, in a matchup going up against the Giants, he's had, 3 of the last 4 weeks, he's had over 20 points in fantasy football leagues. I mean, he's somebody who can definitely help your fantasy team if needed. Zeke showed last week, this is why you don't sit people, right? I mean, a lot of people hated on Zeke for weeks, and Zeke goes out there, puts up some double-digit points, has a solid game, a 100-yard game, only his second of the season, and now all of a sudden everybody's like, well, what do I do with Zeke? You just start him every week that he's healthy and quit worrying about it.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right about Andy Dalton playing well right now. Michael Gallup's got 3 touchdowns over the last couple of games, so I've got Gallup, Cooper, and Lamb listed as starts this week. Definitely going to be rolling with them. Dalton Schultz. Blake Jarwin hasn't been around all season except for the beginning. Dalton Schultz, still not enough upside with him, with those 3 wide receivers playing so well. So this is the team that I'm focusing on right here in this matchup for the New York Giants. If you want to try and roll with anyone there, I do have Slayton and Shepard listed as starts this week, just because it is such a bad Dallas defense that maybe 1 or 2 big plays could be just enough for them, especially for Slayton. Sterling Shepard saw 12 targets last week, 77 yards. He's probably the safest option. Slayton does have 25 targets over his last 3. And of course, Evan Ingram, not a great start every single week, but he's still seeing more than enough volume that he could accidentally slip his way into the top 12.
Yeah, it's just one of those matchups where there's not a whole lot of safety, built into it. You're taking a risk, especially on the Dallas side with the wide receivers, because any one of those 3 can have a ginormous game. But there's always going to be one odd man out for the most part. And who's it going to be on a weekly basis is almost impossible to figure out. Next matchup up is the New York Jets, the Jets, Jets, who are on a winning streak, Kyle, and the New England Patriots, who are not on a winning streak, Kyle. This game is disgustingly ugly, and I don't think we need to spend too much time on it. You're not starting Cam. Please, Lord, tell me you're not starting Sam Darnold, who even though he had a decent week last week, I mean, it's still the Jets. The running game is just atrocious. Maybe we've seen the last of Frank Gore. Who knows? LaMichael Pirine, no thank you. It's just a jumbled mess. The backfield of the Patriots are going to be continued splitting with James White and Sony Michel, and there's just too many options. Cam will call his own number around the goal line. I mean, who knows if Cam's even playing or if he's benched again. So this is just a game that I'm avoiding altogether.
Yeah, the only person I have listed as a start is Jamison Crowder right now, just because of the targets that he typically sees with Sam Darnold. If you're looking for a safe option in PPR leagues, he'll probably have it, because both of these teams are basically going to be playing for like 7 or 14 points. I don't expect a whole lot of points here. They'll probably have to throw the ball a little bit. And the one thing that you can say about the Jets is that they have a better chance of having Adam Gase on the sidelines next year than they do have Trevor Lawrence, and that was not something people were betting on a couple weeks ago.
It blows my mind that Adam Gase still has a job. I don't understand it. He's got to have some nudie pictures of somebody somewhere, because
congratulations to him on getting the second overall pick.
He's been riding the offensive seasons of Peyton Manning from the Denver days for years now, and still is a head coach in the NFL. Mind blowing. All right, next matchup: Minnesota Vikings and Detroit Lions. Now, Kirk Cousins going up against Detroit. Kirk Cousins is on the verge of being a top 12 overall quarterback here so far. Detroit allows over 20 fantasy points per game. We know that Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson can go out there and give him that huge ceiling on a weekly basis. I like Kirk Cousins. Matt Stafford, does Matt Stafford even play? If he does play, does he even play the entire game? Because that's what screwed a lot of people last week. He went out there and after a series, he was basically done for. I'm not taking that risk this week. For the running back side of things, it's obvious you're going to start Dalvin Cook. If you have him, you're playing him, and you're very thankful to have him in Week 17 against the Lions. On the Lions side of the football, DeAndre Swift, I'll start him as a flex play. The biggest issue here as of late is they can't play with a lead, and they can't get him enough touches, and they don't commit enough volume to him in the passing game to give him that safer floor. He's kind of boom or bust, but as a flex play in Week 17, I don't hate it.
Yeah, for Detroit, I've got all their wide receivers listed as sits. Marvin Jones, not a great week last week, but that's because they lost Stafford on the first drive to an ankle injury. So it wasn't even the existing rib injury that caused issues. It was a new one. I'm not expecting Stafford to play this week. He shouldn't play this week. If they were smart, they'd just keep him on the sideline. So I'm just going to sit everyone because we saw how just awful that offense was last week. TJ Hockenson, I'll still list him as a start just because tight end is such a wasteland position. The number 3 overall tight end on the season right now. It's really hard to sit him at this point. He's the safest option of everybody that they have on the team to get some type of targets with Chase Daniels, if that's who ends up starting. So I'll still go ahead and roll with Hockenson. And for Minnesota, Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson, smashing the start on both of them. Detroit can't stop anybody with their banged up secondary right now. Those two should smash this week. And then Kyle Rudolph out again. So I'm going to go back to Irv Smith Jr., 5 touchdowns in his last 5 games. A good low tight end one option for you this week.
You realize you're talking about the Lions a second ago, and you said if they're smart.
Yeah.
When have the Lions really ever been smart?
I don't know. We'll see who they hire. We'll see who they hire this offseason.
We'll address that in the offseason. All right, next matchup, Pittsburgh Steelers, Cleveland Browns. We already touched on it. No Big Ben. Going to be Mason Rudolph. We've seen the offense with Mason Rudolph before, and it's not exactly appealing. So when you have all those weapons, we'll talk about the wide receiver position, and a quarterback who is kind of inept, it's kind of going to hurt the entire offense as a whole. Do they end up resting James Conner a little bit? He was kind of a spark last week for this offense, coming in and showed some resemblance of a running game. As of right now, I want nothing to do with the offense with Mason Rudolph under center. I think the defense is going to be able to focus, on the running game a little bit, whether that's Benny Snell or if that is James, Conner. But I don't want to risk it because Cleveland is having the best season they've had in a long time. And they have a chance to make the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people didn't expect that. And now they have a chance to make the playoffs. They need a win, and they're getting a win when a team is resting their starters. They're getting a chance at it. So I think they come out and have a little bit more oomph. Plus, they get their wide receivers back, which is definitely a positive there. For the running game, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, obvious every single week you're going to start those guys. Everybody knows my love for Chubb. I've had it for years. It's not stopping anytime soon. I'm going to love him again next year.
If you've had Chubb for that many years, you might want to see a doctor.
I need to call somebody about it, but it's just a problem. At this point, though, it's such a pleasurable problem that I've just chose not to address it because it's just like I love Chubb. You know what I mean? Like it's
just keep rolling with it.
Yeah, just at this point, I've just come to accept it. So yeah, I'm going to roll with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt every single week.
Yeah, for Pittsburgh, I'm skipping on the wide receivers and the tight ends this week. I want nothing to do with Mason Rudolph. Hopefully he's not grabbing and swinging any more helmets this year. So let's just, Rudolph, you just stay in the backfield. Okay, don't do anything crazy this week. So I'm going to stay away from all the wide receivers this week. Not even going to touch it. For Cleveland, though, Jarvis Landry, Rashard Higgins going to start both of them. They're going to be back this week facing a team that's going to be sitting starters, has their position locked up, has the division locked up. They could have some guys on and off the field as well. Maybe some defensive guys play a little bit and then come off. Austin Hooper is going to be a start for me. I'm hoping for that one touchdown from him, but Harrison Bryant going to the COVID list this week really helps his opportunity for some more targets.
Yeah, I mean, and you kind of just touched on something that a lot of people, myself included, I didn't read too much into it, but if you think about it now, the whole Myles Garrett, Mason Rudolph feud from a year ago, coming full circle here, the Browns need to win, Mason Rudolph under center. I don't think anything happens, but don't be surprised if Myles Garrett has a little bit of a little bit extra oomph in his step to try to get to the quarterback here this week, causing a little bit more pressure, maybe some more turnovers.
Oh, man.
It'll be fun to watch, that's for sure. Next matchup, the Baltimore Ravens and Cincinnati Bengals. For the quarterback position, pretty straightforward, right? Obviously, you're going to start Lamar Jackson. He's been playing a lot better here as of late. Why? It's because he's starting to run again. And why is the running coming back? It's because the passing game is being opened on a weekly basis. Hollywood Brown's getting more involved, and it's just opening up running lanes for J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards and Lamar Jackson. That's great. For Cincinnati, I don't care if it's Brandon Allen. I don't care if it's Ryan Finley. I don't care how well they've played in weeks past. No way are they getting into a lineup for my fantasy championship. As far as the running game goes, Gio Bernard I'll take a chance on in Cincinnati, but only if you really need to. Sure, Gio was played a little bit better here the past couple weeks, but they're starting to split a lot more with Samaje Perine, Travion Williams. They're getting touches, and all that's doing is taking away possible opportunities for Gio. It means that he needs to be super active in the passing game. So he's a little bit of a risk. Gio's the only guy I'll touch in Cincinnati. For Baltimore, J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards going up against the Bengals in a must-win game for the Ravens. I'll still start both those guys. I think both of them have a safe enough floor to be flex-worthy here in Week 17.
Yeah, the Ravens offense looking a lot better since they're coming out of the bye week. They lost 4 of 5 games and they kind of looked like they were done. Stick a fork in them, and then all of a sudden this offense really explodes, coming back by quite a bit. 34 points, 47 points, 40 points, 27 against the Giants. So the offense is rolling and they're looking good. And Marquise Brown has been in the center of that, 4 touchdowns in his last 5 games. So seeing Lamar Jackson, that passing game, work the way it did last year is excellent to see. And I think he continues in this matchup this week. So I'm going to list Marquise Brown as a start 100%. I'm going to put him in my lineups just because there's not a whole lot of options this week. When you have that touchdown upside, I think in a week like this, you kind of just got to follow it, cross those fingers and pray. And then also on the flip side for Mark Andrews, I mean, he's one of the best options at tight end this week, especially again, if we're going to be missing Kelsey or anybody else. For Cincinnati, I'm going to start T. Higgins, tons of volume with him. Tyler Boyd, I don't know if he's going to be back yet. Didn't play last week, coming off of that concussion. We'll see if he gets back this week. If he does, he will definitely be a start for me. But right now, T. Higgins, very, very safe. And if there's no Tyler Boyd, then I will go with Drew Sample as a start. If Tyler Boyd comes back, I'm not going to start Drew Sample. But if Boyd is out, I'll go with Sample because last week saw a little extra volume with no Boyd.
Yeah, they got to have some type of offense, right? They're not just come out and just – they don't have a running game solid enough to just not throw the ball. T. Higgins is great. Boyd will suck up some of those targets, absolutely. So next matchup up, the Miami Dolphins and Buffalo Bills.
Miami, baby.
I mean, if you looked on paper 17 weeks ago and he said, the Bills and the Dolphins, I really don't care. Now you probably think a little bit differently because this is actually a really good matchup between 2 really good football teams. Buffalo right now looks pretty dang good. I mean,
really good.
I'm not going to try to jinx Bills Mafia here because I'm not going to
try to put Chris Chouse.
Yeah, I'm not going to try to put any bad juju and jinx them or nothing, but this team is Super Bowl worthy. I mean, they're playing great football at the right time, so you're obviously going to start Josh Allen. There's a little bit of risk there if they do get a large enough lead that maybe we don't see Josh Allen the entire 4 quarters, but hopefully they can put up a big game before that. That's what worries me a little bit. For Miami and Tua, I like Tua, but Tua needs more healthy weapons. I'm still not convinced that Mike Gesicki's 100% healthy, and we don't even know if Devontae Parker's playing. That just limits Tua and the potential ceiling. The floor's somewhat safe, but I'm not trying to start somebody this week who's going to score me 13 points. I'm trying to start somebody who's going to score me like 20. So Tua, he's going to be a sit for me. On the running side of things, I like Myles Gaskin in Miami. I've liked him ever since he's been healthy, the guy's been killing it this year. Had a huge week last week. I wanted to see what the split was going to be like with both him and Ahmed healthy. We saw it last week, and last week Myles Gaskin had 19 touches to Salvon Ahmed 7. This is his backfield. He's producing with it. I'll start Myles Gaskin in Miami. For Buffalo, pass. Altogether, pass. Because Singletary and Moss just eat into each other's production. You're reliant on whoever scores the one touchdown possibly, and it's just a crapshoot, so I'd rather just hold off and wait.
Yeah, Myles Gaskin coming out of Washington, liked him. Finally getting a little bit of a shot. So good to see. For Miami, I mean, like you said, love Tua, but is Tua going to get replaced in the fourth quarter? I mean, he's going to get replaced in the second quarter.
Yep.
When's it going to happen? So, that with that kind of dynamic they have going right now, I don't really trust any of the wide receivers. I know a lot of people were kind of looking at Lynn Bowden Jr. to be a guy to kind of help them through the playoffs, but he's not even really seeing any targets right now. I mean, Mac Hollins, had that big catch, but it was only 2 catches last week. So the only person I'm going to go with on the offensive side of the ball for wide receivers and tight ends will be Gesicki, just because he's kind of the dominant performer out there. If he ends up playing and being healthy. He played last week, looked good after Fitzpatrick came to that game. So, Fitzmagic works some magic with Gesicki. And with Buffalo, Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley, I've got them both listed as starts. If you own them, you play them. Buffalo's still kind of looking to lock in that number 2 seed. So I think that they are still going to play their guys. They're going to be on the field. Maybe if it turns into a blowout, you start seeing them get pulled off. But as of now, I'll play both of those. And if you're looking for an emergency option at tight end this week, I'm okay with Dawson Knox. He was a guy coming into the season that I kind of liked, but with the addition of Diggs, didn't think it would really work out with all the wide receivers. But all of a sudden here over the last several weeks, he's a low-end tight end 1. So I'm okay. He's been scoring some touchdowns, getting a little bit of volume. If you need an emergency option, okay, he's not a top 5, top 10 tight end. He's going to be looking around that maybe 11 to 13 or 14 area.
Yeah, and one footnote to that, when you mentioned Fitzmagic, if for some reason Ryan Fitzpatrick is named the starter,
that changes
doesn't sound
everything.
like it's going to be, that will change everything, especially if Devontae Parker does play. I would start Ryan Fitzmagic this week against Buffalo if there's a healthy Parker and Gesicki. I would absolutely smash that in a heartbeat.
Yes.
Next matchup, Seattle and San Francisco. So the biggest question here is which Russell Wilson shows up and how aggressive are they really in Seattle? I mean, they've already locked up that division, but Russell's been really hit or miss with touchdowns, right? I mean, to start the year, dude was basically penciled in for 3 touchdowns a week. Easy. And then all of a sudden here, over the last month and a half, you're just hoping and praying for 2 in a game. I mean, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, been super boom or bust as of late. I mean, we're seeing, random touchdowns going the way of Jacob Hollister now and then, David Moore. I mean, it's just up and down. You can't count anything. The running game's kind of, stalling a little bit. San Francisco's defense isn't horrible. I don't sit Russell Wilson, though. I just don't overly look forward to starting him. He's probably going to be right around rankings 10, 11, 12 range for me. He's not an absolute must start. San Francisco, CJ Beathard, nope, pass. Even though he had a solid week 16, I don't think he's got enough weapons to go out there and really put up a solid number. I'm not starting CJ Beathard in my fantasy championships. The running game, love me some Jeff Wilson Jr. With no Raheem Mostert, he's taken over this backfield. He's involved in the passing game. He's scoring touchdowns. He's getting volume. He's not really splitting with a whole lot of people. So I'll sign me up for some Jeff Wilson. Seattle, I'll still roll Chris Carson out there. Carlos Hyde isn't being overly used. Carson's still seeing the bulk of the volume. Hyde has stolen a few touchdowns and had a couple big plays over the past few weeks, but Chris Carson's still the lead guy here, and they need to get this running game going because that's how they win games in the playoffs in Seattle, and I think they need to try to get some momentum going here with Chris Carson this week.
Yeah, for the wide receiver, Seattle, DK Metcalf, still a top 10 wide receiver. You play him. I mean, you just put him out there, even if you're worried about the matchup, whatever it may be, what he's been doing. Russell Wilson, you got to play DK Metcalf. I have been ranking him a little bit lower. I've been ranking him in that bottom half of the wide receiver ones instead of all the way up towards that 3, 4, 5 area that he was for so long. And Tyler Lockett, the issue with Tyler Lockett is he's got a really low floor every single week, but he's still, going to be probably good for 30 to 40 yards. But it's those times that you set him that all of a sudden, boom, he goes off for over 100 yards and a touchdown or two that you're like, son of a, and you just absolutely hate it. So I continue to list Tyler Lockett as a start because hopefully by this point, he's more of a wide receiver 3 for you, and you can take some of that hit if he doesn't have a great performance. For the tight ends, not starting anyone there. For San Francisco, I'll start Richie James because the last time they didn't have anybody on the field at wide receiver, Richie James had a pretty big game. Going up against Seattle, Seattle doesn't have the best pass defense in the world. I'll go ahead and go with Richie James again with Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, both missing. George Kittle, he will be a start for me this week. Even on a snap count last week, still balled out.
Yeah, I mean, I don't care where his balls were at, Kyle, but it's more importantly the connection that he the connection he has with CJ Beathard. CJ Beathard looks his way a lot, and George Kittle has that opportunity for another big game for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Next matchup up is the Arizona Cardinals and the Los Angeles Rams.
Can I just tell Cardinals fans something for a second?
Be nice,
I love your
Kyle.
team.
Be nice.
I love your team. I adamantly defended them and Cliff Kingsbury this weekend on Twitter, fought with people over it, and told someone from USA Today that they had a horrible take because they said, no, y'all are taking another step next year. Support your team.
That's right. If you're out there watching and you're a Cardinals fan, Kyle did. He lit into some people and took some heat for the Red Sea this past weekend. And I mean, he's a believer, so go stick up for us out there if you see that. But the Cardinals and Rams, this could turn into a huge mess because we got no Jared Goff, broken thumb. Now we know we have no Cooper Kupp, no Darrell Henderson. We already know Cam Akers is hurt. And now there's a possibility that there's no Kyler Murray either. He hasn't been ruled out, but he's questionable here this week. This could turn into a mess because both of these teams need to win to get to get a chance to get into the playoffs, and they may be down to backup starters. So obviously we know there's no Jared Goff, not even touching the Rams there. The running game basically is just Malcolm Brown right now, which isn't horrible because at least we know it's just one guy going to get the bulk of the volume, where in the past it's always like, what's the split going to be? So if you're in a deeper league and you need a flex play, Malcolm Brown is about the riskiest that I would possibly get there. For Arizona, we're hoping Kyler Murray plays. Watch the practice reports. Hopefully he's a full go by Friday, by Saturday, and then you can go ahead and start Kyler Murray because, like I said, they got to throw it all out on the line. They got to win this ball game. It's a difficult matchup going up against that defense because the defense is still healthy for the most part for the Rams. As far as the running game goes in Arizona, Kenyon Drake just continues to not knock the doors off of things, but he's solidly going out there on a weekly basis, scoring 10+ fantasy points. Chase Edmonds not getting the volume. Kenyon Drake is a low-end running back 2 start for me this week. I think he's got that floor of right around 12 points or so. If he can find the end zone, it'll be a great thing because the volume should be there. If Kyler Murray is limited, they'll have to rely more on Kenyon Drake in the running game, so I'll start Kenyon Drake.
Biggest issue this week, for the pass catchers, DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, you can't sit DeAndre Hopkins in a championship matchup, but he might not have Kyler Murray. The other team is going to be facing Jalen Ramsey. So, it's a tough defensive matchup for him as well. For me, you got to play him. You just have to know going into it that if he only gets you 5 catches for 50 or 60 yards, you're just going to have to deal with that this week. But you still play him. Even if Kyler Murray were to sit, you still play him. DeAndre Hopkins is just one of those guys. I mean, he put up numbers in Houston forever with guys that, not even in the league. Absolutely.
Brock Osweiler.
Yeah, with Brock Osweiler, the definition of booty stank quarterbacks. I just came up with that.
Wow, that's what's scary about that is booty stank is what was on the forefront of your mind. Like that's just weird that's where it went immediately.
I haven't showered in a few days, so no, I'm kidding.
You've been gaming a lot, right? It's got some serious stank up in the office. I got you. I hear.
I wiped it all down with a Clorox wipe earlier. So anyway, we digress. So you got to start DeAndre Hopkins. You got to put him out there. You have to play him no matter what. If Kyler Murray plays, I am willing to go with Dan Arnold as a start this week. Again, we're getting super risky with some starts this week, but with as tough as a matchup the wide receivers are going to have, Dan Arnold's been getting a few more looks over the last few weeks. It's boom or bust, a little bit of volume last week, was putting together a string of touchdowns. So wouldn't be surprised with that tough matchup to see him get a little bit of looks. I'm sitting everybody for the Rams. Because before we started recording, when Jake said Jared Goff is definitely out, I said, well, who's the backup? And we both go, we don't know who that is. I mean, I had to go back to his college stats. I mean, his senior year was in 2017. He had like 29 touchdowns and 6 interceptions, but the 3 years before that were absolutely gross in terms of stats at Wake Forest. So, this Woodruff kid, I'm not even going to, I don't know who he is. I've never seen tape on him. I'm not trusting the dude. He's been in the league for several years now. He has no stats in the league. I'm not doing it.
Yeah, no, I'm not doing it either. The guy played college football 40 minutes from my house, and I've never heard of him before. So, not worth it. Not going to happen. Not worth that risk. It sucks to lose maybe a Robert Woods this week. If you're absolutely desperate and you have no other choices, make sure you watch the rankings videos because he may still fall in there somewhere towards the low, the wide receiver 3 range. But just pay attention to it. A team that I do like, though, Kyle, the next matchup, the Jags and the Colts. I love me some Indianapolis Colts this week because they got to win, 1. 2, they're playing the Jacksonville Jaguars, who really don't play much defense. So I'm definitely firing up Phillip Rivers. Love the potential upside for them. Jonathan Taylor against the Jags, Week 17. Yes, absolutely sign me up for that. If you're in a deeper league, a PPR league, I think Nyheim Hines has some value this week because I wouldn't be surprised if they get a nice lead and Nyheim Hines gets a little bit more volume. It just all depends how large your league is. If it's a 10-team league, I'm not throwing out Nyheim Hines. You're maybe in a 12-teamer with an extra flex spot or something, then yeah, I think about it. For the Jags, Mike Glennon, hell no, I ain't starting Mike Glennon against the Colts. James Robinson, I would love to start James Robinson, but he's not 100% healthy, and he gets a difficult matchup against Indianapolis, a top run defense in a must-win game. Pass. What?
You know who you have listed as a sit, but you could start if you really wanted to.
Who?
Dare Olawala Bing Bang.
I
forgot about that nickname till I just saw it.
I totally forgot about Dare Olawala Bing Bang. Yeah. He didn't look half bad last week, Kyle.
Oh.
He looked okay at times. Do I still want to start Dare Olawala Bing Bang? I don't.
No.
I don't want to. It's not going to happen. But he did. Thank you for bringing that up because that's I forgot about Mr. Olawala Bing Bang.
I did too. It just popped into my mind. I was like, oh, I forgot we gave him a nickname.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the one thing about Jacksonville this week is they're probably going to play a little bit because they've got the number 1 pick locked up, finish the season on a win if you really want to. It doesn't matter at this point. So for me, DJ Chark's going to be the only guy that I start this week. I mean, he looked okay last week. If you're desperate, go ahead and run with it. Glennon did seem to still look his way a little bit. The tight ends in Jacksonville have been nothing recently. So Chark's the only pass catcher I'm worried about. For Indianapolis, like you said, Jacksonville doesn't play a whole lot of defense. So I'm willing to go with a couple of wide receivers this week. T.Y. Hilton's probably a little bit safer. He's been seeing more volume, but Zach Pascal's got 3 touchdowns in the last 2 games. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him maybe find the end zone again or still have a decent day. And for the tight ends, like I've said for several weeks now, if you played in a league that let you draft tight ends based on the team only and you took all those stats, they might be like tight end 3, but they don't do that. These guys are all splitting snaps, targets, catches, everything. Just leave them off your board.
Yep, agreed. All right, next up, Tennessee and Houston. I love both Deshaun Watson and Ryan Tannehill here this week. They both got great matchups. They both have consistent floors. They both have super high ceilings. I have no issue starting, Deshaun Watson or Ryan Tannehill in a great matchup for the running game. I don't think you ever sit Derrick Henry, ever, especially in a matchup going up against Houston, which is one of the worst run defenses in all of football. On the Houston side of things, though, David Johnson is kind of starting to look like old school David Johnson, being involved in the passing game. He's putting up huge points. He's scoring touchdowns. Both of these defenses allow over 21 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. David Johnson was in my top 10 last week and may squeak in there once again this week. I like me some David Johnson, and obviously you start Derrick Henry. Where are you going?
It was just squeaking in there.
Oh, I thought you were in lift a leg or something and squeak it in there.
Oh, no. Houston, Tennessee, Houston. I mean, I think Tennessee is going to end up blowing them out this week. I don't think it's necessarily going to be that close. Tennessee hasn't looked great over the last couple of weeks, especially against Green Bay last week. So look for them to bounce back. The the Tennessee secondary continues to get burnt. Corey Davis, AJ Brown should have big weeks because of that. Jonnu Smith, haven't really been on board with him for a few weeks now because he's been trying to work his way back from injuries. They've been splitting snaps. His targets are starting to go back up a little bit, though. And again, this is a good matchup. So I'm okay with going with Jonnu Smith here, hoping he scores a touchdown. And then for Houston, Brandon Cooks, Keke Coutee, good with, again, going with them against Tennessee, knowing that Tennessee secondary does get burnt. Brandon Cooks, Keke Coutee. I think I said it backwards a minute ago now that I'm actually like talking, but right. Cooks and Coutee are the guys that could burn that secondary for Tennessee. On the flip side, Houston secondary is not really any better at this point too. So this could end up being a back and forth match, a high scoring match. We could see Tannehill and Watson throwing the ball quite a bit.
Yep, I like Johnny to score a touchdown or maybe even 2 this weekend.
Ooh.
I think it happens. I think he finishes strong. Next up is the Las Vegas Raiders and the Denver Broncos.
Vegas, baby.
A couple of teams that really aren't playing for much of anything, right? They're just playing to finish the season at this point, and Josh Jacobs has continued to basically troll the fantasy community for a couple weeks now, and people have about had it with Josh Jacobs. His stopping short of the goal line, losing the game, the week before that in his Instagram post. I mean, there's some questions surrounding Josh Jacobs, and we obviously know he does not like anything to do fantasy football, but it's a decent matchup, right? I mean, he's going against the Broncos. He's getting over 20 touches a week. It's hard to sit somebody in a week like this with so many question marks that you know is going to get that volume. So I'm obviously going to start Josh Jacobs. For the Denver side of things, there's no Phillip Lindsay. So Melvin Gordon's going to get the bulk of those touches going up against the Raiders. Don't hate that either. So I'll start Melvin Gordon. At the quarterback positions, Drew Lock has been either a top 10 quarterback or outside of the top 20. There's like no middle ground with Drew Lock. So it's too hard to trust him. So he'll be a sit. And Derek Carr, who I expected to sit last week with his groin injury because Marcus Mariota looks so great, and yet Derek Carr comes out and absolutely kills it last week. Has a huge game. He looks healthy. Now he's going up against a below-average defense in Denver. I'll start Derek Carr here in Week 17.
That Derek Carr, Nelson Aguilar connection has been so good this year. And yeah, most of those yards for Nelson Aguilar last week came on one play, but it was, I mean, they still look good together. The connection is obviously there. Nelson Aguilar hasn't been sexy at all this year, but he's had some big games. And even in his not so big games, still seeing a decent amount of targets. We're going back to him as a start. Darren Waller, you always start Darren balls to the Waller. That doesn't matter whatsoever. On the flip side with Denver, I mean, I'll start Noah Fant. He's kind of that number 2 target right now. And he's a little bit more dependable. And I would love to start Jerry Jeudy, but the dude's dropping balls left and right. Okay. He's dropping more balls than a 13-year-old boy. So we need to stay away from him right now because I just can't trust it. I can't trust. I mean, 15 targets last week and didn't really turn in that good of a performance. When you get 15 targets, you should have some upside.
I got nothing. I'm just going to on to the next matchup. Here we go. The Los Angeles Chargers, Kansas City Chiefs. We talked about it earlier. The Chiefs could be sitting the majority of their starters. Do we see Mahomes? Do we see Kelsey? Do we see Hill? We really don't know. We have thought in the past, over the past couple weeks, with no CEH, we'd see a lot of Le'Veon Bell. Nope. We're seeing a lot of Darrell Williams still. So, I mean, a lot of questions in this offense. I put Darrell Williams in my rankings last week because I said, do not be surprised if this dude leads this backfield here this week, and he actually did. I don't know if it's worth a risk at this point. Is Bell considered a starter right now? Because if he is, he's potentially somebody who gets rested. I mean, he is not playing like a starter, but we really don't know the exact timeline for when CEH can come back either. And they got to make sure they have a solid stable of running backs. So Bell, huge question mark for me. I would almost feel a little bit more comfortable starting Darrell Williams here this week at the running game. Austin Eckler for the Chargers. I think he starts every single week. We expect that Kansas City's got an offense that's going to be built upon scoring points no matter who's under center. Now, yeah, Chad Henne's not Patrick Mahomes, but I can still see them putting up some points on the board, forcing the Chargers to go out there and end on a good note. So, yeah, I'm still going to go ahead and roll there with Austin Eckler because they're going to have to use him in the passing game. Justin Herbert throwing the ball to whoever is healthy at the time. Hopefully Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Jalen Guyton, somebody, Hunter Henry, somebody get out there so Justin Herbert has somebody to throw the ball to. Could be another huge game if they can get them on the field. So I'll go ahead and start Justin Herbert as well.
Yeah, and I mean, we're on the same page there with LAC. I mean, going up against Kansas City, you're going to have to throw the ball quite a bit. So I've got Mike Williams as a start no matter what. The big playability is definitely there against Kansas City. They are known to give up some of those big plays. For Jalen Guyton, if you want to get a little bit risky, that is fine if there's no Keenan Allen. Tyron Johnson, I'm not starting him unless there's no Keenan Allen. If there is no Keenan Allen, then those three are all starts for me. If Keenan Allen plays, then Guyton and Johnson will be sits. Allen will probably be a start. Hunter Henry is a start no matter what. If he's back, I think he is going to end up being back. I don't think he's technically been reinstated off the COVID list as of this recording. So just keeping an eye on that. But, that would be my suggestion, is to roll with him if he ends up being there. And then for Kansas City, we just don't know. So for me personally, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, as of right now, is sit, because it sounds like they are going to sit, or maybe just play one quarter or something along those lines. So right now they are sits. We'll have to let this play out as the week goes on, though. So check back on the rankings videos to see if we hear any more news before then. Now, if both of those guys are sits, then Sammy Watkins, Demarcus Robinson will be starts for me, because I still believe both of those guys will be on the field more than enough to see targets from Chad, the GOAT backup Henne.
Is that his nickname now?
I just came up with it.
It has nothing to do with him playing in Michigan, right?
Well, I mean, the GOAT of all time at quarterback is from Michigan, and the GOAT backup of all time also from Michigan, so it makes sense.
What a coincidence, right? Crazy. Next matchup, Green Bay Packers, Chicago Bears, two teams that still pretty much playing for something here. Aaron Rodgers is a no-doubt start every single week, playing great football. In my opinion, could be the front runner for MVP as of right now. I mean, he's been playing absolutely great, but what about Mitchy Biscuits?
Mitchy Biscuits.
Mitchy Biscuits is just continuing to deal on a weekly basis. He's now finished top 10 in 3 out of the last 5 games that he's played. I mean, the guy is absolutely great. He faced off against Green Bay back in week 12, finished as quarterback 6 overall. So, I mean, he's playing good. He's throwing the ball. They've opened up the run game. I'll start Mitchy Biscuits this week as well. Yes, he's probably going to be a little bit lower down the rankings, not a smash top 10 play, because there's still a difficult secondary there in Green Bay, but still going to start Mitchy Biscuits. The running game, we're definitely rolling with Demont, right? It's a weak run defense for the Green Bay Packers, a lot easier to run on than they are to throw on, and David Montgomery has been playing out of his mind here as of late, so he's a definite start. On the Packers side of things, I mean, you start Aaron Jones, but at what point does this just get ridiculous? Because Aaron Jones, he splits with Jamal Williams. Jamal Williams goes out and you're like, here you go. Aaron Jones about to just dang kill it. And then all of a sudden, A.J. Dillon comes in and looks like an all-pro running back in that backfield also. So you start Aaron Jones. I'm not going to start A.J. Dillon because, A, I want to see it for multiple games. We're not going to have that option. So you start Aaron Jones. You just hope that A.J. Dillon stays on the bench.
Yeah, for the ball catchers this week, Devontae Adams, he plays, you start. There's nothing to go against that. No. Wide receiver 1. No. You play him. Not trusting any of the other guys, though, in this matchup. Again, Green Bay hasn't locked up that bye as of yet, so they're going to want to get a win. But again, if they get pretty far ahead, do they start pulling some guys off the field? Do they pull Aaron Rodgers off the field at any point in time? Probably won't get that big of a lead, but this is a tough matchup against the Chicago secondary. So not really trusting any of the other wide receivers. I will trust Bobby Tonyan this week, though. The dude does have a pretty good path to a touchdown and some yardage this week, considering the wide receivers are going to have such a difficult matchup against the Chicago secondary. Allen Robinson, might see some Jair Alexander this week, but you got to start A-Rob. Again, not the sexiest wide receiver 1 in the world, but he's consistent, and Mitchell Trubisky gets him the ball. For the tight ends, Jimmy Graham coming off the big week last week. I'm not going to trust for that to happen back-to-back, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's just hard to trust it back-to-back. The potential is there, but the consistency isn't, and you're either going to get 3 or you're going to get 23. Which one do you want to take a risk on getting?
Neither. I don't want either of them.
You don't want 23?
Not from him.
Not from him. Next matchup, New Orleans Saints, Carolina Panthers, part 2 of the Teddy Bridgewater Revenge Tour here, and it's difficult because Teddy has a safe floor. He's had a safe floor all year long. He hasn't been a bad start any week. He hasn't had an overly high ceiling, but he hasn't been a bad start. But going up against New Orleans, they allowed the 3rd fewest points to fantasy quarterbacks. I do expect New Orleans to get a lead, which means Teddy's going to have to throw more in this game, but he's still going to be a start, but a low-end start. He's somebody like, if you're scrambling, if you lost a Patrick Mahomes or a Big Ben and you need somebody else, that's where Teddy comes in. He's not somebody who's going to be super high in the rankings. Breeze, He looked a lot healthier last week, right? I mean, I think Alvin Kamara made Drew Brees look even better than he was last week, but he looks healthy. They're building momentum. The way that they utilize the running backs in New Orleans, which we've seen forever now, it helps raise that ceiling and the floor for Drew Brees because he can excel with just some short dump-off passes, not having those bigger weapons down the field. So, yes, I will start Drew Brees here this week. Teddy B, more of a low-end start. The running game, I honestly have zero interest in Mike Davis at this point. He had 0 targets last week. 0. Why? Like, why does a dude who excelled catching the ball early in the season get 0 target, no target? Like, not even an accidental, I'm going to throw it at your feet target. Like, he got nothing. And that's where his ceiling comes from. So, no, not touching Mike Davis against this defense. But Alvin Kamara and Latavius Murray, 100% you go with Alvin Kamara. You saw why last week putting up a 50 burger. And Latavius Murray, I think, is going to see more involvement this week because, A, it's a weak run defense for Carolina, and they're trying to keep that pressure off of Drew Brees because he may not be 100%. I like Latavius Murray as a deep league flex as well.
Yeah, Emmanuel Sanders for New Orleans, another good opportunity for him. Again, seeding is not locked up at this point. So, New Orleans is going to go into this looking for a win. Unfortunately, with the other wide receivers, the ball after Emmanuel Sanders is kind of that wide receiver one, the ball's just spread around an awful lot right now. So it's really hard to pick anyone else in this offense. Jared Cook, Breeze is kind of looking his way again last week, but a lot of yards, but only on 2 catches. So very reliant on that big play. So not loving Jared Cook this week. But again, if we're going to be missing some of these top options, you might not have a choice. You got to go with Jared Cook. For Carolina, I will list all 3 wide receivers as starts. Likely a little bit of a back and forth. They're going to have to be throwing it quite a bit. DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel, the best options here for me. Anderson's probably got the lowest ceiling. Just hasn't been that great since the beginning of the year. Overall, a good season, but he just hasn't been that great down the stretch. And then, of course, Ian Thomas. Who cares?
Who cares? He shouldn't even play football at this point. We just don't care. Okay, last matchup of the week. And this one's going to be a little bit difficult. We got the Washington football team, Philadelphia Eagles. For Washington, no more Haskins, right? He gone. He's not even on the team anymore. He cleared waivers. He's a free agent. There may be some interest around the league for him. Does Alex Smith come back and play this week? There's a chance that happens. But really, there's no quarterback option fantasy football-wise coming out of Washington here this week. It's only in Philadelphia. I'm going to put you on the spot, Kyle. Can you tell me, overall, where is Jalen Hurts ranked over the last 3 weeks as far as overall quarterbacks? Like as far as total points scored, where does Jalen Hurts fall over the last 3 weeks as a starter?
Half PPR standard. I'm kidding.
Oh, wow. I was about to smack you. I'm like, dude, don't even. We get those comments all year long. Don't you start it.
All right. Over the last how many weeks?
3 weeks since he's been a starter. Where does he land in total points scored overall as a quarterback?
QB 7.
He's quarterback 3 over the last 3 weeks. Okay. And you know why? It's because dude likes to run. He's had at least 60 rushing yards in all 3 of those games. We saw the big play with Deshaun Jackson. He's making this offense move. I don't know exactly what kind of movement you're doing because he moves a lot better than you. I put a comment in our group chat earlier today and said, is Jalen Hurts kind of like a young Cam Newton clone because of the style of play? He's smaller than Cam Newton, but the way that he utilizes his rushing ability and then pairs it with the passing ability, I can see a lot of similarities there. So I'm going to go ahead and start Jalen Hurts, the rushing side of things. Antonio Gibson came back last week. He looked fairly healthy. J.D. McKissic continues to catch balls, a lot of balls. So both of these guys will be fantasy options and starts for me here this week, especially in PPR leagues. And then Miles Sanders in the backfield for the Eagles has been a lot better with Jalen Hurts under center. The ceiling's not always there because Jalen's kind of taking some of those rushing attempts himself. However, with that big playability, I have no issue starting Miles Sanders this week either.
For Washington, I'm keeping an eye on Terry McLaurin. Is he going to be able to get back this week and play? If he does, only wide receiver that I'm considering there. Logan Thomas and J.D. McKissic just make too big of a dent in the passing game for any of the other wide receivers to really be guys to focus on too much. Logan Thomas, though, he's one of the safest options right now at tight end, which is absolutely crazy to see. And then for Philadelphia, I'd like to start some of these other guys. Deshaun Jackson had the big game last week with that one catch. So, but it's still kind of being spread around a lot. Miles Sanders is running the ball a lot. Obviously just talking about Jalen Hurts running the ball a lot. Ertz saw 7 targets last week. Goddard only saw 3. I expect Goddard to get a few more. So I'll start Ertz and Goddard because I think they're kind of the 1A, 1B in terms of targets right now. And then it kind of shovels off to Jalen Reagor, and then it kind of goes to the other guys. So those are the only 2 pass catchers I'm looking at for Philly.
Yeah, it's hard to kind of pick somebody on a weekly basis. It's going to be different every single week. You're reliant on that big play. But that was it. We just went through all the matchups here for this week, week 17, fantasy football. It's been a fun year, right? We've had a lot of fun. Not a lot of people put out week 17 content, but we told the community that we're dedicated to you for the entire season. That's week 17 included. Yes, that means that we consolidated into one video, but you still got all the information you need. We'll still have our rankings videos come out towards the end of the week because things will probably change here over the next couple days, so make sure you tune into those. And then also, just a reminder, 2 reminders. One, our draft guide is available for next year already, pre-order. It's only $14.99, and last year was over 600 virtual pages. If you're looking to dominate the entire year, stay subscribed and pick up the draft guide. We'll make sure that you go out there and you win some fantasy championships. If you don't believe us, go back to last week's videos and look through the comment section. People are sending us comments at a crazy clip saying, hey, thanks for helping me win my fantasy football league. That's what it's all about, is bringing the community together and winning some championships, Kyle.
Winning some ships, baby.
Yeah. Well, on that note, please don't unsubscribe. Stay tuned all year long because we go 12 months out of the year. Just because the season is over, all this means is now we go into the NFL playoffs. Then all of a sudden we got combine, draft, rookies, all kinds of stuff coming up. So make sure you stay subscribed. We're not going anywhere all year long.
Right.
We're staying here. So hopefully you guys had a great holiday, Christmas, New Year's right around the corner. Make sure you be safe, take care of each other. We look forward to kicking off a fresh 2021, Kyle, because 2021 is going to be way better than 2020 was. Just got a hunch, Kyle. It's got nowhere to go but up, right?
Don't jinx us.
That's right. I probably shouldn't have said that. That's my bad.
Knock on wood.
That's my bad. I'll take that one. But hey, hopefully you guys have a great week this week. We appreciate all the support. Once again, happy holidays to you and your families. And we will look forward to talking to you guys later on in the week. Have a good one. Thanks.